Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name's Robert Winters,
And I'm Judy Nathans.
and we are now in the merry month of May 2022,
Yep.
May 3rd to be precise, the best month in the year, of course, because it's my birthday is this month. I'm being that's a little inside joke for Ken Reeves, who used to actually every year he would put in a city council order celebrating all those who were born in the month of February because he was born in that month.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, well, he didn't, he was funny that way. Everybody laughed. It was fun. So anyway, so things are happening. Weather's getting better. What looked like a decline in COVID is now turning back into another upswing, but hopefully not a very big one. Even the wastewater is coming back up again, but hopefully not for too long. We'll see. So, I was actually looking at I don't want to go look at those graphs or anything right now, but I was looking at the patterns from a year ago. And, we had sort of a large crest, and then there were a couple of bumps, and then it faded away into the summer, commencing right around now. So, maybe if history repeats, we can have reason to be optimistic. So we'll see. So, enough on that. the morbid talk of COVID. So let's see. So what else is going on? The big item this week on the civic front was the introduction of the FY 2023 Cambridge City Budget.
It's a big one. Yep.
Yeah.
Why don't you show us a visual of it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's you can get it. It's available now online as a PDF, but this is what the full budget book looks like.
You have a couple of evenings to look at.
Yeah, right? It's full of lots of charts and graphs and.
But also, it should be
verbiage.
Available at the libraries.
Yeah, you could.
But it's not. One year I know I couldn't find it at the
Yeah,
library.
they do print up enough extra copies that for the hardcore characters like me.
Right, but it also should be available to the public in the library.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It goes in along with last year's budget book. And I have boxes and boxes of budget books going back probably about 30 years now, actually. Yes. I think I need a new room in the house just for the budget books.
Who are you? I mean, not that I wish you ill will, but who are you donating all of your archival stuff to?
I think a lot of that stuff nobody would actually really want.
I disagree with you.
Well, I mean, there's some things, I have a lot of books.
Historical Commission? I don't know.
Cambridge history, whatever, which, I would certainly default to get, going back to the Cambridge room of the public library or anywhere else. But they, those places already have pretty much everything, but
they do. But I think you collect a lot of things that I think some people just, even, organizations do not save. And I think it's important because, especially in this age of digital, people don't have paper copies anymore.
For example, here's the original committee report establishing the Plan E charter.
Wow. Oh, yeah. You showed that before. See, there you go.
Yeah. So, I got them around, got a million of them here.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, so the budget book came out and, there's a lot of things to be said. Maybe I'll do a little share screen here and just to take a look at some of the budget priorities. I'll have to do a little quick zigzagging around here to get to this here. All right. So actually, let me go start it up at the very tippy top. So the something of it's kind of near and dear to my heart as a person who's been complaining about the inability of the city council to come back with committee reports over the last year or two. Apparently, I think maybe somebody recognized that this is a problem. So they're actually adding a position in the city clerk's office to provide funding for a new clerk of committee position. Right. And that position existed many years ago, as a clerk for the committees. And, in terms of just the record keeping and making sure committee reports are made and done in a professional sort of way.
Why can't the personal aides take minutes at
that was tried. I think
Yeah.
Councilor Mazin did that one time.
Oh, and then it may not be very neutral.
Oh
then.
my
Is that
gosh,
what you're saying?
yeah, it was biased. It was
Well, not if they
disaster.
use transcription software anyway.
Right.
But
Well,
anyway, yeah,
but even when you do transcription, you
that's
still have to
true.
review it to make
You're
sure
right,
it's
and
actually
edit it. Yeah,
reasonable.
right.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was sort of anyway, we'll see what that position really is, but I think it's actually, I believe it's what I was describing.
That's a lot of money.
Well, I think that includes the benefits.
So what? That's
salary
still a lot
benefits.
of money. Wow.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Should I apply
Wow.
for the job? Are you saying?
God. Yeah.
I don't
honestly,
know.
I don't think you need it. I don't think you need it. And you would
Other than the fact that I might not get along with enough of the committee chairs, I'd probably be the most qualified person.
But when aren't there more than one? I mean, there's an assistant city clerk, right, Donna?
Yeah. There's the city clerk's office. I mean, you could maybe argue that maybe they should just sort of reallocate the job descriptions.
Right, but I guess it's gotten too much in some ways.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. So
more meetings, yeah. Okay.
So I'll say a few more items that are on here.
Yeah. What else is there?
Because some of these things are kind of ordinary and expected. Some of them are kind of really different. Like the Election Commission has a big jump in its budget.
Where's that?
It's a
It's
23.
page.
It's right up at the top.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's a 23.7% increase over last year's budget for the Election Commission. But I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that we're covering the cost of early and mail-in voting for municipal elections, which is not reimbursed by the state.
That's not a lot of money when I'm looking at all these other figures.
No. Well, we're not talking about gigantic departments here. Okay.
Right. I know.
Even the percentage might be large, but the actual dollar amount is not huge.
Health insurance, that's a biggie.
That's the river that runs through everything.
Cash cow, yeah.
Is that their pensions and benefits, those are things that have really caused the city budgets to balloon over the years. Is just
they
covering
get
all
great
of those
benefits
costs.
and pensions.
Exactly. Yeah, the city's not chintzy about these things. So anyway, that's a lot of money for that one.
A new housing search case, so they're going to add to that.
Yeah. So they're
and housing liaison. Wow.
Yeah, so they're definitely changing some of the things within was it Maura Pensac, I think, working out of the manager's office.
So they're going to add 2 positions. So that's.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it is a curiosity for me, but I remember when Bob Healy was city manager and they created the Cambridge Environmental Program and housed it within the manager's office.
Right.
I think it was because those were the days of the parking freeze and there was potential controversy, and the manager basically wanted to keep it close, because there were potential, legal quagmires and all sorts of stuff.
I see.
And then eventually spun it off over to Community Development Department, which is, became like the transportation and planning and engineering division within the Community Development Department, but it started as a subdivision within the manager's office. So it certainly seems over the last few years that, with the housing liaison working out of the manager's office, that seems to be growing into something. But it kind of makes me curious because there is a housing division within community development, and at some point you would think these should sort of be merged and not really be under the executive department.
But it's a new position. I mean, more positions relatively new, so I guess it has to start there.
But in addition to, there's housing search case manager position and a housing liaison position funded in there. There's, in response to city council orders, a new equity and inclusion analyst. And then the one that actually, I'll tell you a funny story, says to provide funding for a new digital equity broadband project manager position. Right. Actually, let me sort of step out of this for a moment just to speak to that. It's a funny thing. It's like there's a tradition, which is that, I used to say, can I get the budget book? And they go, not until all the counselors have gotten the budget book can you get it. And it was just sort of a tradition. I've always respected it. And, and to me, it was a little silly because what was I going to do? Really.
It's a power thing.
It was like a power thing, but I understood it. It was, if a city councilor got wind of something in the budget after I had already said
Right.
something, written something
So
about
it's
it.
like a
They did not.
journalist finding something out that they shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I used to report the election returns before the city, and they
Oh,
got
yeah.
mad at that. So now they embargo the
Yeah.
information.
Well, I
so
can
that
understand
happen.
that. I can understand that.
I
You
think
have
it's
to have
sort of more of an
self-control.
embarrassment issue, really.
Well,
But anyway, so what happened over the weekend?
yeah.
I was just on like Twitter, and I happened to see, a little snippet out of the thing about that broad digital equity and broadband
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
I went, wait a minute, that wasn't in the materials for the council meeting.
Oh.
Somebody got access to the budget book, right? And I said, wait a minute, I'm not gonna, this shall not stand.
So who did?
I won't say.
Oh,
But what I said, well, if somebody else can do that, they're not going to beat me. So I said, how can I find out how it? So I did a little detective work, and I found a way to get it. Under the cover of darkness, basically by looking at the URL and just figuring it out. And
did the counselors have the book last night at their meeting?
They did, yeah.
They did. That's right, because Dennis Carlone held it up. Yeah.
But I managed to somehow sneak a peek well before that. So I broke the rule. I should say I broke the tradition, because it's sort of it's of no consequence at all. But I was very curious.
When did it go online for the rest?
I have no idea, because it was only when I was
last night.
Today it was available online publicly, but
that's what they did. Okay.
For those of us who are savvy at like detective work,
like you,
I guess I broke the rules a little bit, or at least broke the tradition. It was not illegal, nothing like that. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding.
Yeah.
But the only reason why I did that is I wanted to have access to one particular thing, which unfortunately I don't know that it actually was loading, but I was sort of trying to get it to load. It was so I'll just speak to it without actually
you could try
doing that. Let's see. Now we're not. I have to do another share screen here to speak to it.
Yeah.
All right. So okay. So I was very curious about this, and I've spoken about it for weeks now. About there was one new budget line item called community safety, and I figure, okay, we understand what that has to be. It has to be an outgrowth of all the talk about alternative ways of responding to police calls, etc. Right. But which, by the way, in itself is not controversial. I mean, there are people within the police department who said, yeah, we shouldn't be bearing all this responsibility. They're happy to do it and to do it well. And at least in Cambridge, I think we do it pretty well. But, there was a political pressure to create something separate. Yeah. So, I saw there was a budget item, on Thursday night, I saw there was a $2.87 million assigned to for the creation of a community safety department, and with six funded positions. The city's pretty chintzy about adding new positions. So this is probably about a quarter of all the new positions, I think. So it's a big deal. You kind of have to look through the budget book to see a little bit more detail about it. I actually had posted a document for that, but unfortunately I was having a hard time loading it up here. So I'll just sort of talk about it a bit.
Well, send it to me, please. So I can
okay, sure.
Yeah.
But it's you can link it off of my website. It's right there.
Okay. Okay, fine.
But in it, it's basically 4 pages in the budget book describing this new department. And remember there was all this talk about this HEART proposal, acronym HEART.
Oh yeah, and they're already recruiting people for their own program because they have been somewhat promised money from the city. I think this incorporates some of that. I do.
Well, I'm not so sure because there's no mention of it. But,
I know,
but another thing which I thought was significant is the city is using its own acronym, which is CARP, CARP. So,
I don't think that's the best, but anyway, I just
may not be right. But it's quite clear that this alternative will not involve having a separate phone number to call.
Oh, no.
Everything will be routed through the emergency management.
Right. I mean, they want that, but if they want that, they're going to have be their own little entity and maybe get some funding somehow from the city. But then who do you call? when your windshield's busted. I hate to use that analogy, but it's like, that's really what's going to happen. It's going to be confusing for residents if
But
they don't know who to call.
Right, but the bottom line is that they're not in the budget. So
Okay.
what may be true, they are one of the requesters for extra ARPA money.
Yes.
You know, this COVID relief
Right.
money.
They were asking for 5 million.
Right.
Or was it 3 million? It was something.
Right.
It was between 3 and 5 million.
But
Yeah.
I believe we're at something like 33 million left to be allocated. But there's over $130 million in requests for that, and most of which is from the Cambridge Housing Authority. So,
Okay.
you know, whether that ends up being budgeted that way, which is hard for me to imagine, and a little curious, like, why would you do it if you're creating, which is why would you want to have a duplicate service, basically?
Right.
So
no, I think the bottom line is that the 911 is rooted through the city, and even if they come up with a different dispatch, it's still going to be rooted through the city. That has to be the way it is, and in fact, that is the way it is in Eugene, Oregon, with Cahoots. They do not have a separate thing. Yeah. So let's put that to rest. Okay.
Let's put it to rest. And actually, if you look even further at some of these priorities in here, not only are those 6 positions for community safety, there's also a new assistant director of public safety information technology position.
Where do you see
funded.
That?
It's directly below
right
that.
below it.
It's part of emergency community.
Director.
It's part of the emergency communications department, which is really where all these things would be routed.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So and there's also a position for a half year for a licensed social worker within there as well. Okay, so it seems to me like, well, you know, I'm sure some people could apply for the jobs, but the thing is, they are being funded as part of regular city departments, right? And
well, it's interesting that those are separate from the 6 positions in the Department of Community Safety. That's
right. So it's right, but it does appear to be related. So really, there's more than 6 positions. But they're all within the existing city department.
Right. Emergency communications is not necessarily with community.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, one thing, though it's not really shown in here, so maybe I'll just sort of step out to speak to it here, is that one of the other interesting changes is, you know, and we'll see what happens at the budget hearings. The very first one next
May 10th,
Wednesday. May 10th, because that's all the public, you know, a lot of the public safety stuff is all compacted into that one day.
That's right.
But, you know, remember all that talk about defund the police? Well, we are putting more money to create an alternate response mechanism for, you know, ones that could be done potentially without uniformed police.
Yeah.
But there's also approximately a $5 million increase in the police budget. So, you know, the notion that somehow we're going to start winnowing money away from the police in order to fund this alternative because we don't like police, that doesn't seem to be what's playing out at all under the city priorities in this budget. And by the way, there was, and you remember this as well as anyone, you know, there was sort of a conflict, like 2 different visions for how these alternate police response could take
one
place.
was through the city of the task force with Mark McGovern and Denise Sims leading, and that was spoken to.
Right, and then it was more of a renegade group that involved a person or 2 who was on that task force.
I wouldn't call it renegade. I mean, they did their homework and they had people from Cahoots and all. I mean, they did their work, but whether they spoke for the community is a whole other issue. Okay.
Well, I will call them renegade only because when it came time for public comment on the matter, they were the ones who were most dismissive of what the city's proposals were.
And they had all of their,
no, you should do it our way, and you know,
which is still the way, but I still think they're not. It really bothers me when people say the community has spoken. No, they have not.
No, they have not.
And in fact, you can ask Denise Simmons about her community, and she'll certainly say
that's right. I think
no,
she can
they are
set
not.
people straight. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see what happens. There's going to be some fireworks, I'm sure.
You know, one of the things that I always find perplexing and bordering on confusing sometimes in reading city budgets, especially in the last few years, is that in the last few years, because of COVID, there's a real divergence of between the proposed budget. The
Oh, right,
adopted budget is almost always
right,
identical. They pretty much what the manager
right,
says is what comes in. There may be a
right.
minor tweak here or there, but
Okay, yeah,
there's almost never a change between the
right,
proposed budget and the adopted budget.
right,
But then there, as the year progresses, there's money gets added in out of free cash or other things change.
right,
Positions go unfilled. And during
right.
COVID, that was actually one of the ways they were making ends meet in order to cover so that
Because
many of these extraordinary expenses
they didn't
without
fill
having to
positions,
deplete
yeah,
all the free cash.
right,
They were actually leaving a lot of positions that were promised unfilled.
right,
They're
right.
only now starting to fill them. And I think the manager spoke at length about that last night, that there's a
Yeah,
lot of new positions finally being
right,
filled,
right,
some better, some for better or worse, we'll
right.
say.
Hmm.
But so there's basically, just say there are 4 words that make it a little confusing. For example, well, let me just say is that the manager and David Kale announced that there was a 6.5% increase over last year's adjusted budget,
Adjusted budget. Okay.
but actually it was a 7.2% increase over last year's adopted budget.
Oh,
Now, what does that mean? It means
interesting.
that
Yeah,
during the year, extra money got shoveled into
was
there.
shut, yes, okay,
So that, but you'll see the words and it really takes some navigation skills.
yeah,
Proposed budget, adopted
Yeah.
budget, adjusted budget, and now in the budget book, you'll see the projected budget, meaning
well, I
what they
guess because
think they'll end the year with.
it's not like the Constitution where they need to have amendments.
Right,
voted on. So
right.
they can do that, it's.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but so just in case anybody notices some
Yeah.
difference in the figures quoted
Okay.
between what increased by this amount.
Projected, proposed, adopted, okay.
Proposed and adopted are usually
Adjusted,
the
oh, we have
same.
adjusted. okay, yeah,
Adjusted and projected, yeah.
All right,
And it's just an acknowledgement of the fact that there are,
Yeah.
there's free cash that may get allocated. There are
Right.
extraordinary expenses that come up. Like remember when the
Mhm.
city purchased I think it was a BBN field out
Oh, right,
along
yeah,
Freshman
yeah.
Parkway.
yeah,
I mean, things like that do come up, and it will it'll show up somewhere, right? So anyway, so it's all underway, and I think as you mentioned, the first budget hearing is May 10th,
May 10th from 9 o'clock.
and
all
then there's
day,
another,
supposedly,
and then there's another one.
for different departments, and then there's
Yeah.
another date in case they have to finish things up.
Yeah, and for those who are interested in this stuff, and I mean, some
I'm
people
very interested.
feel that it's like watching paint dry, but I actually do
Well,
find it interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna tape it. I mean, I'm not gonna watch 8 hours of it, but I
Yeah.
won't be here, so I have to tape it.
Yeah, but so some of it'll be boring, I suppose, and some of it'll be maybe
Yeah.
confrontational. I mean, we'll see what happens when they talk about why are we getting a $5 million increase in the police budget? Zondervan, I'm sure, will lose his mind over that.
And he won't pass. I mean, what was the
Well, he
one
will,
thing?
he will vote against the budget because of that, or else
Right,
he will
but
make
he-
his usual statement
Right.
about, I believe the entire city budget is a racist document, and therefore I'm not
Yeah.
going to vote for it, which to
Yeah.
me is just a political showmanship,
Yeah,
really.
well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's a coming. One other thing on the sort of the budget side of things is that in addition to the budget, which is really the operating budget, there's also the
Mhm.
capital budget. So there's
Oh, operating is another word I'll add to my list here. Operating budget, adopted, adjusted, projected.
right for the capital budget, but you see some things under the public investment category, which are
Yeah.
actually paid for out of existing funds. But
Okay,
it has become pretty much the tradition that the day or approximately the same time that the budget book comes out is also when the
Loan.
city manager comes to the city council with a series of loan orders,
okay,
right? So in other words, those are things that are going to be paid where you're going to actually go out and they'll be bonded.
right.
So you'll basically incur debt, and then you pay it out over a much longer period of time as
Right.
opposed to pay as you go out of the operating budget.
And we have a very good bond rating, so enables us to do that. And I guess the way they've done it is that somehow we never break the bank, because this is the way you do it, even though we have free cash, supposedly free cash. you have to make loans in order to really do what you want to do, right?
You know, it's basically, it's an averaging process. You can average it
Yeah.
out. And they've actually been successful even in renegotiating those to lower interest rates,
Really?
taking advantage of the very good bond rating. And so that's where we
Okay.
save money
All right.
in the long run when we bond, is that we can actually do things like that.
Mhm.
You know, so that's pretty good. But you know, but anyway, there's I forget how many, you know, $150 million or something worth of
A lot.
loan appropriations. One of which I struck, well, there's, you know, 78 million or thereabouts for doing real basic
Sewer.
infrastructure, sewer
Yeah, right. Yeah.
projects, the
Right.
unseen stuff that Cambridge actually does
Unseen,
really
underneath
well.
our feet. That's right.
Yeah, it's you know, that's actually one of the better
Mhm.
aspects about a city manager form of government, is that
Yeah,
it tends to take care of those things much
right,
more deliberately than other kinds of
right.
governments do.
Yeah.
You know, so we're way ahead of a lot of our neighbors in terms of water and
Uh-huh.
sewer infrastructure.
Mm.
You know, I mean, you've got 100+ year old systems, you know, you got
Yeah,
to renew them, and we're pretty
right.
good at that.
Yeah.
But one of the other ones, which is arguably a little bit on the discretionary side, is there was money allocated to, you know, to basically finally carry out the Grand Junction path. So,
Yeah, I saw
you know,
that.
alongside the Green Line extension, which will be coming online maybe late this year, right?
Hmm.
Some of those ones, did I hear October, I think, something like that
No.
latest. Um, Parallel to that is the so-called Somerville Community Path, which comes down to and would connect with the Grand Junction path
Right,
over on East Cambridge,
right.
and then connect over to the BU Bridge. I have yet to see any
Yeah,
uh,
I know.
hard plans for a crossing
I don't think I'll
over.
be alive when that happens, but it's a
No, no,
great
no,
idea.
no. Listen, they're, you
Oh,
know,
that's a lot of
coming
stuff to have to
coming
deal
up
with.
soon is the
Yeah,
all the stuff
I
in
know that,
Alston,
but it's
and the
just
two
saying. Yeah.
there's room for two tracks over
Okay.
the railroad bridge under the BU
Yeah,
Bridge, one of
I
which
know.
has a track on it, and the other one
I
could
know
be
that.
community
I go
path
over that all
connecting
the
down.
time. I know.
Yeah.
All right,
So
we just have about 20 seconds left, so
yeah.
let's, so
But
that's a
anyway,
great, yeah, that's
yeah.
great,
So
yeah.
I think it's something to be learned in taking a good look at the budget book, and I encourage
Yeah,
people to actually,
okay,
at least you can download the PDF and give it a good look. See.
right,
So anyway,
okay,
we'll be back in 3
yep,
minutes on
all
Cambridge
right,
Inside Out.
see you then.